Het-Heru. Assalamu alaikum. Namaste. Huru Nefer. This is Kasak Keperu with another video for you. This video, I'll talk about how do you ascend to the fifth dimension, and subscribe to my channel with family and friends who can ascend to the fifth dimension, and we can get this revolution started. So let's talk about this, the fifth dimension. How do you get there? Where is it? But before I do that, I think there are some important things that we have to cover first so that we have a real basis and understanding for what is the fifth dimension. You know, is it somewhere here on Earth? Is it in a different plane or universe or realm? Now, what I'll do is I'll cover a couple of dimensions, such as, you know, third dimension, fourth dimension, and then we'll get to the fifth dimension. And we'll talk about what the property of each dimension is. It's important that we aspire to ascend the fifth dimension. And as the Magi's enter the chat room, I will greet them. Emerald Jade, Het-Heru, Deborah, Namaste. So, when I first began in the priesthood and started to go public and talk about certain things, one of the things that I put out there and was probably one of the leaders in discussing this is that the problem with the world today is the left brain. Now, many people have equated the problems with to the world as emotionalism, you know, not being spiritual. The problems with the world is white people or black people. But I specifically said in the papers that I wrote, in the teachings, and in the lectures that I gave, that the problem with the world is the left brain. And that as long as that we're polarized in left brain thinking, you're going to have things like sexism, you're going to have things like racism, you're going to have things like the acquisition and the pursuit of power and wealth, and not abundance. So these things are ruled and controlled specifically by the left brain. And coupled into that, I also talked about the mammalian brain and the reptilian brain, and how the goal is to ascend, and you'll start thinking using the higher faculties of the brain, using the frontal lobe and integrated brain thinking and things like that. Too many people out there, especially those who call themselves scholars or comedians or what have you, really focus on the external physical things. This is why they're polarized in left brain thinking, and left brain thinking, it cannot think abstractly, it thinks concretely. So this is why you'll see the problem always comes in the form of black people are the problem, white people are the enemy. You know, the enemy is outside of ourselves. There is an actual enemy, or our savior lies outside of ourselves. Woman commented on my video, and she says that things will be okay because Jesus is coming. And, you know, I'm rather insulted by that, because, you know, if you have any sense of intelligence, and even if you're using your left brain, you will realize that Jesus didn't come for the Jews and not in Nazi Germany. Jesus didn't come for the slaves during the transatlantic slave trade on the slave ships. So why are you expecting Jesus to come and save the world? But this is the thinking of the left brain, which gets us into trouble, coupled with that emotionalism of the mammalian brain and the reptilian brain, because that is emotionalism and that's rigidity. The reptilian brain is ritual, it's rigidity, it's structure. It's not energetic, it's not flexible, it's not dynamic. So again, I was the only person coming out there talking about these things. And I was trying to tell people, stop blaming segments of society, stop blaming the fact on people need more spirituality, because that's not going to do it. And I said specifically, when you merge the left and the right brain and you become an integrated brain thinker, then we will eliminate all of those problems. And you know what happens when you integrate the left and the right brain? You ascend to the fifth dimension, in a manner of speaking. So let's get into this. Now, we often use the term 3D, and stands for third dimension, but I use that for third density. Okay, and when I say third density, I'm talking about the physical manifestations, objects, things. So if you're living in third density, which the ruling elite wants us to stay in third density, this means that you're emotionally tied to material and concrete things of the world. Rap music is specifically geared toward keeping you in third density, or 3D, so that you are ruled by your emotions, which the ancient Kemetic people call Sahu or Set. The grand scheme of the story of Asar and Set was that Heru was fighting Set, his uncle, for the throne of Kemet, Egypt. And it was only until Heru sought the counsel of Thoth or Tahuti that he was able to become victorious over Set, which really is a metaphor for becoming victorious over your emotions, because Set represents the animalistic emotions. Hence why when you see Set, his head is of an animal, a strange deformed animal. And when you see the iconography of Heru, you'll see that growing out of Heru's back is Set, meaning that your animal aspect of who you are. Now, what is going to Tahuti or thoughtful counseling mean? Going to your higher mind, wisdom, going to the fifth dimension, ascending to the fifth dimension. So when you think using both the left and the right brain, you take on a different perspective. So 3D, 4D, and 5D are just different perspectives. Yes, they're actually realms, but they're also perspective, because you are a multi-dimensional being. Keep that in mind. You do not exist primarily in the fourth dimension. And we need to understand that. So what is the fourth dimension? The fourth dimension is 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time. Time is an illusion. Time is not real. Time is relative. In fifth dimension, there is an absence of time. Okay, understand that. So look at things this way, right? Look at things like this. When you're operating in density, or let's say fourth dimension, you are subject to linear space-time. Therefore, you have placed limitations upon yourself. But when you operate in fifth dimension has an absence of space and time. The only thing that exists in the fifth dimension is the present now moment, where the past, the present, the future all collapse into one singularity. And that's important to note. You see, the New Age movement has come along, and now they're talking about the experience. I've always said that we have to grow beyond left brain polarized thinking, which some have coined the Hegelian dialectic. That now, if you're operating in the 4D framework, then you're subject to time and space. What does that mean exactly? That means that you have taken on the burden to go and have a better life. But this is all an illusion. And the greatest illusion of the fourth dimension is the illusion of individuality. That we actually believe that things are individualized, that they are real, and that they're solid. Nothing is solid. Everything vibrates at a frequency. You compose of subatomic particles and they vibrate. And the illusion in 4D experience is the idea that apart from us, that there is an outside, the universe over that. Well, recent discoveries in quantum physics has told us that now reality does not exist apart from the observer, the double slit experiment. That now we understand that the universe is interactive, it's energetic, it responds to you. It is responding to you. And now we're beginning to understand that there is a multiverse now, that there are many different versions of you, an infinite number of you that can be experienced. And in fact, that you are now shifting through many of those universes and you don't even realize it and you can't feel it, but you are shifting all the time. This is now become validated. And that this shift happens like a movie frame. You have a film strip and there's many different frames of you. And each frame is a little bit different than the other. And that gives the illusion of motion. But the only thing that really, the only thing that really exists is the one frame. And you're moving through frame to frame to frame to frame at an incredible speed. And these are all multiverse, actor, or movie star, or singer. Now, this discovery that not only that the world is, we are projecting this outside what we feel is a third dimensional space, but now many of these different levels, which we will call fractals, that will lead up to maybe one day finding the base reality or reality prime. Crystal, okay, like we're photons. So this light is coming through and it's projecting us into this functional experience. But the trick is like, okay, if we exist, because we're just a projection. And this is actually science. This is actually what they are figuring out now. And it goes aligned with the experience at the cinema, at the movies. Now, you get caught into thinking that you are the movie, but you're not. Your consciousness having this fourth dimensional experience. So let's take this to a deeper level. Once you realize that there is no time space, meaning everything is one. And I talked about the singularity. So in a sense, there's a singularity in the fifth dimension. Going back to what I was teaching many years ago when I said we integrate the left and the right brain, you get the oneness. So with this understanding that everything is one, because when you have no space and time, then everything is one. This takes us back to quantum mechanics, which tells us about quantum entanglement across the universe. And whatever you do to this particle, the other particle will react in kind, as if you were doing the same experiment to that particle across the universe. So quantum entanglement tells us that everything is connected, that there's this electromagnetic field out there where everything is contained, and that thing is full of information. Now, what happens when you reach fifth dimension, which is an understanding that there's no time, there's no space, everything is one, similar to a singularity unified principle, a theory, then you understand that there is. Now, as a magi, when you start to think of something, it happens. That is what we erroneously call synchronicity. But what that really is you becoming, wow, I was just thinking about that cheese sandwich and someone brought me a cheese sandwich. That's fifth dimensional thinking. So we should be thinking, how do I stay on course? Build that momentum. The universe, like a genie, it manifests what I want instantaneously. You're only getting a tease, a little taste of your power when you have those synchronistic events. You only get a little taste, that's a tease of fifth dimensional experience. But now in comes the ruling elite that will confine you to third density, because they need you to be confined to third density, which is why the rap music, the other music they put out there, because that music should have in it certain healing frequencies and vibrations. It should be at things like 432 hertz so that you can ascend. But they specifically keep it at the third density level, the base energy. We all have this fear of death because we're caught in fourth dimensional thinking or third density. When you die, you go before Osir because you didn't do it because you were, but understand that's exactly the way the ruling elite want it, because they need subjects, they need minions. And the more that they can get society to subscribe to third density thinking, the more followers they have ready to shift into thinking. Now, hold on, let me get deep with you now. In the now moment that we are experiencing. Now, the ruling elite has already been to the future. So they understand that the future is just a matter of projecting your consciousness there. So they know the future that they want to do and certain things they have to, and then they start now, meaning that third density thinking is always looking at the effects, but never the cause. And limiting you to choices is no choice at all. It's the choice of worse or even worse. So this is why Tahuti is known as a great scribe. I have a problem using the same mindset that created, I believe it was Einstein said that. And because we look at the way the world is today, you're trying to solve it using the left mastermind all of that, integrated brain thinking, to come up with the solutions and to take us to a higher level of consciousness. It's the only way. I want to use the esoteric term of 5D. Fine, I'm fine with that as long as we get to the solution. Okay? As long as we get to the solution, I am fine. But I don't want people thinking that ascending to 5D has to happen after you die, or that you must be the Buddha or the Dalai Lama to be able to get there. You don't. You don't. (5D), one of the principles for you in 5D, everything is one, so you cannot oppose yourself. You cannot hate yourself. Everything is one. There's nothing to oppose. 5D is holistic thinking. So I want us to basically keep that in mind, because when you start to understand things like, really there is no time. That's an illusion, and that's something that you subscribe to because the ruling elite duped you into subscribing to that. Therefore, you actually manifest that, because one of the principles of consciousness is non-locality. That means you don't exist in any one fixed place in space and time. You're everywhere. You can project your consciousness to Alpha Centauri if you wanted to. Now, the great thing about this is that you can contact your future self, your past self. You can contact yourself that exists in an alternate universe or on a different planet. And many of us are getting those messages, but we're misinterpreting them, and then we don't know what they are. So our future selves are contacting us, and we just don't get it. We don't read the message. We don't understand it. So we lose that communication. It's cut off. Because what happens is you have got to divest yourself of everything that you know in this third density experience. You have to say, I reject it. I mean that sincerely, that I do not acknowledge this experience. The only experience I acknowledge is fifth dimension. And acknowledge your power as God, man, God, woman. Because if you command yourself and say, there's an outside world, and that means that you're accepting a limitation, then by your command, the universe will respond and then put limitations upon you. Or source, do it, whatever you want to call it, universe, source, Yahweh, Het-Heru, Nebecher. This is why when a woman emailed me and she was upset about the way the world is today, and she says, well, Jesus is coming, and I got upset, and I allowed myself to get upset with her because what she did inadvertently, I didn't realize it, she placed her power, she commanded that her power be placed upon a fictional outside entity. She has rendered herself so that when she goes before Tahuti or Thoth, and he reads as described what she has done and what she has extrapolated, for, redo it all again. And then she becomes a minion of the ruling elite, the Illuminati. Because now they can get the planet, the majority of the population of the planet, to shift their thinking to third density. And when they shift their thinking to third density, it creates that alternate world and universe full of third density thinkers. So that means that these people will be slaves. But if we can get the masses of the population to be what? Integrated brain thinkers or fifth dimensional thinkers, then we'll have this planet shift to one where they don't exist. And if we can shift to a planet, a world where they don't exist, then you eliminate left-brain thinking, you eliminate sexism, poverty, racism, you eliminate war. Do you understand what I'm saying? Women are evil, black people are evil, white people are evil. Then you subscribe to third density thinking, and by your command, the universe responds and it creates the enemies for you. And the enemies are nothing but fictitious distractions that you should not be subscribing to. You see, the ruling elite, they're going to put out an ideology. They're going to put out the subliminal messages. They're going to put out the shapes, the music, the harmonic frequencies to get you to think on the earth level, a very earthy thinking, very the pictorial representations of things. They were doing that using the right brain. The Egyptologists said that the ancient Kemetic people loved the puns, that their stories contain story within story within story. Get that? Story within a story within a story. And that their civilizations that they structured contain fractals, self-replicating. Fractal is a self-replicating organism. Because we understood depth, we understood abstract concepts, and we also understood concrete concepts. Now, understand the way the world is today, the ruling elite has won. They have won the battle. They have trapped us in third density thinking, hence left brain thinking. But now a curious thing has happened as we are on the cusp of moving to the age of Aquarius, that people are now awakening to the fact that there needs to be an ascension. So now the fight is for how many people can be reincarnated as you on and you help the planet transition to the fifth dimension, 5 density thinking. Do you follow me? Actually, let me not use that term 5 density because it's not actually correct. But the more reincarnated souls they can get that are trapped in third density, the more they can shift the consciousness of the planet toward a very dark future. And they've already been there. So they know exactly the type of future they want, and they know exactly how to set it up, which is why I've always said that if you're looking to fight them, you have to understand that they are at least 10 steps ahead of you because they control time and space. Do you understand what I'm saying? You think that you can combat, create circumstances that align with their wishes. But the trick is you can do that too. You can manifest circumstances or situations that align with what your wish is. I've said this many times to people that they need to understand this very clearly, that we all do not exist in the same realms. We don't exist. The current idea that there is this one reality that everybody subscribes to, that we all exist in the same realm, reality. We do not. For example, I may have a friend across town who I'm not talking with. I have to understand that that friend now exists in a different time space continuum than I do. It is only when we come into contact with each other physically or when we talk on the phone do we merge realms based on a certain frequency that I tune into to where I can interact with him and talk to him. Trump is living in a totally, I'm going to use some words that are interchangeable, but the convention doesn't have to stick. Let's just say Trump is living in a different dimension or different realm. Now, if I want to interact with him, I would have to tune into a frequency that will allow myself or my person to run into him, and we'll call it synchronicity, to run into him, accidentally run into him. I may be walking down the street, his limo and police escort are driving down the street, and he gets a flat tire, he gets out to check it, and I'm standing right there and I look at him and he looks at me and he goes, "Hi." That is an idea of the two realms merging. Now, these different realities that we're all living, you can access all of them through frequencies and you do it automatically. You're just not aware of it. And through science has done these experiments where they've placed people in a plane and the plane is flown over from east to west coast, and that they've looked at the time and they realized that there's a time lag between the people up there in the air. It's not only about time dilation. We're talking about individual pockets or bubbles of certain realities that come and merge when the frequencies align. Just like I say, well, if you want to be wealthy, you have to find the mantra that when you recite it resonates a certain frequency that will allow you to obtain the wealth and interact with it. It already exists. Everything that there is, or everything that everything was created already and exists. There is nothing that's lacking and needs to be added because nectar is complete. God is, source is complete. So everything already exists. It's only a matter of you finding the frequency. Meet J Lo, then I have to find out what the frequency is to allow me to meet J Lo, and then recite that mantra, that vibrational frequency, to where I will run into her, which will seem like a fortuitous moment or synchronicity. But really, it was just the merging of two different realms. This is why you are a magi. This is why you're practicing magic, so you understand these principles and these higher levels of thinking. So you don't get caught up and subscribe to you, to keep you in this fourth dimension experience. Because they know if they can keep you, they become the rulers. You become the subjects. This is why, looking at the way the world is today, they've already won. Because we're already trapped in left brain thinking. We're already trapped in third density. But there's still time. There's still time to us ascend to the fifth dimension. This is why you have the Buddhists and those people who are high, like Native American medicine men, your shaman, your priests, your priestesses in the non-Western traditions who tell us to not get trapped into, not get trapped up, and they think they have to give away the world, but not of it. Do you understand? That is the way to teach yourself that I can have all these material things, but not place my dependence and love on them. That if I lose them tomorrow, I will still be okay. Huzzah, yeah, you should use theta brainwave technology. That will be very helpful if you were to use that. So Sue-Ann, that is the question is, what does it mean when you feel like you're here but not here? You lost in the moment of existence. That's a trance state that you're dialed into, and you have to find out what frequency that is, because there's different frequencies. One for astral projecting, one frequency for higher intelligence, and there's all types of frequencies. So you have to find out what's going on when you when you go in that trance state, what type of state that you're in. There's a Tahuti state. Tahuti state is no local. So I want you to think about that, or fifth dimension, I should say. It may, you know, it just may take some time to start thinking in that way with the integrated brain thinking, and not thinking so much primarily out of the mammalian and reptilian. Things will start to happen. Every day, I start just in awe and wonder at the things that are happening in my life. It's magical. It's just like wonderful. And it's very hard to describe because the English language has been stripped of vibrations and tonal frequencies, and we can't put a label or a name onto certain experiences, because it's very, how do you do that? You know? And there's certain cities out there that when you experience them, how do you describe them? You know, you'll see them and you'll say, well, I don't even know how to describe it. It was a wonderful experience encountering that being. And when you're on that course, it's only a matter of keeping that momentum going, and you'll get stronger and stronger as a magi. It's BS, a belief system. Something that's contrary to your being, you subscribe to it and you manifest that. You have to be very careful of where you place yourself and around whom you're, that they're trying to put into our heads so that we can manifest that dystopian future that they want. You have to learn to psychically close yourself off from that stuff, because otherwise I stop them from saying certain things because I don't want them limiting themselves, and I don't want my consciousness to intake that stuff and create a reality that I don't want. I'm very good at that. I'm very good at manifesting things, and I do it involuntarily all the darn time, to my detriment sometimes. But I'm a Pisces. Pisces are good at being receptive, which is good for creating and doing magic. And this is where you get into astrology, and you'll understand that each astrological sign has its own expertise, its own talent for doing certain things in the magical arena. Limit your power, and that the things that we say can sometimes backfire, and we have to be very careful of that, because when you start creating an enemy, or you associate certain things to an external force, then you're creating problems for yourself. I talked about before, when you look at your mate and you think that you're having an argument with your mate, you're not having an argument with your mate. You're having an argument with another aspect of yourself, because you manifested your mate. So stop arguing with yourself. But this external world, especially those psychologists who subscribe to the Freudian way of thinking, will tell you that that person is a real person and that they are external from you. No, that's not true. There's only the one. So with that said, I want to thank you for tuning into this broadcast. And if you guys get an opportunity, please feel free to donate to the channel. The link is in the chat box. And I think I've covered answered everybody's questions. But just keep in mind that when we're using these terms of third density, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, that the term is not really all that important, but it is the idea behind it that is important. And you know, the goal, yes, the goal is to ascend to the fifth dimension, or to become holistic thinkers, integrated brain thinkers. In doing that, we will solve a lot of problems on the planet. We'll change the core frequency of the planet to change to a world that is more conducive to love, prosperity, balance, and all of that good stuff. So until my next broadcast, this is Kasak Ma Keparu, son of Tahuti and Ma'at. Amen Ra.